The girl was destined to be different from the moment she was born. During her first birthday ceremony, when children usually grab an item to predict their future, she didn't choose anything. She only grabbed her father's hand and refused to let go. Her father, a powerful tycoon, was so moved that he treated her as his most precious jewel, while her two older brothers immediately realized that their lives wouldn't be easy from then on because even as a baby, their little sister already knew to hold on to the strongest pillar in the house. As she grew up, she proved herself with her sharp mind and fearless courage, successfully creating her own company named after herself, Shilli's Choice. Her career flourished smoothly, not because of luck, but because of her brain, sharper than jade that could break stone. Even when she was caught in rumors of dating a celebrity, she stayed calm and smartly turned the situation to her advantage. While others were busy figuring out how to clear her name, she boldly insisted that the media not blur out her earrings, because those earrings were her company's newest product line. She wanted to use the scandal as free publicity. Meanwhile, her two brothers had long married and started families, but in trying to prove their worth before their father, they often sabotaged each other. One was scammed out of a fortune, and the other's quarrels with employees caused the company stock to plummet. After years of not visiting home, the daughter finally returned and spoke directly to her father, saying that seeing him healthy was enough to make her happy. Such a simple, sincere sentence touched her father deeply, and to everyone's surprise, he announced that he wanted her to inherit the family business. She never expected this, but he explained that she was the most capable and reliable of his children. From that moment on, Shilli's life seemed unstoppable, and knowing she would soon be busier than ever, she decided to treat herself with her favorite activity, paragliding. But little did she know, this flight would change her entire life. A photographer recorded her flight as the wind suddenly turned wild. Shilli was still laughing that even heaven seemed to favor her when, in the next instant, she saw a tractor flying through the air. The sky darkened, and a tornado came roaring toward her, sweeping the photographer high into the air while Shilli herself was pulled by a mysterious force straight into the storm. When the winds finally settled, the rescue team searched all night. Some were injured, some dead. But Shilli was nowhere to be found. None of them knew she was actually hanging from a tree, unconscious. After an unknown amount of time, she slowly woke up, looked around in confusion, and grabbed her walkie-talkie to call her assistant. But no one responded. She looked down, saw the terrifying height, and screamed instinctively for help. A patrolling soldier nearby heard a woman's voice, which was impossible in this restricted border area, so she raised her guard and approached carefully, aiming her gun toward the sound. Shilli, seeing someone in uniform, got excited, thinking her father had sent a military rescue team. But the emblem on the soldier's uniform frightened her. Hearing the click of a loaded gun, Shilli panicked, unbuttoning her harness and saying she'd come down immediately. But she lost her balance and fell straight into the soldier's arms. Luckily, the man caught her waist in time. Believing she was safe, Shilli quickly promised not to expose his identity as a North Korean spy, only for him to retort that she was the spy. She laughed in disbelief until he told her this was the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea. When he said he'd have to take her in for interrogation, Shilli got scared and said, "It's just a border, right? I'll cross back and we'll call it even." Knowing that if she were taken across to the other side, she might never return. She turned to leave, but he stopped her, warning that the area ahead was a minefield. Just as he stepped closer, she accidentally triggered a mine beneath her foot. For the first time in her life, she felt truly hopeless. Pointing at her parachute tangled in the tree, she insisted she wasn't a spy, that a strange wind had blown her here. But the soldier refused to listen. Protocol demanded he take any intruder into custody. Shilli tried backing away, asking him to just pretend he hadn't seen her and let her go. But when she turned to run, he shouted again that it was a minefield and not to move. Terrified, she froze as he smugly said, "See, I told you there are mines all over this place." Yet in the very next second, she stepped on something suspicious. She signaled him to turn around and look, but as he reached for his walkie-talkie, it slipped from his hand and fell into the river. Fortunately, his foot was still steady. Shilli quickly grabbed the walkie-talkie, and when he thanked her, she thought, "Do you think I'm stupid? If I give it back, your comrades will come catch me." So she turned to leave again, and he warned that she was standing on a wooden mine, that if she wanted to live, she should move closer to the shore. Realizing he wasn't entirely bad, she set the walkie-talkie about a meter away and said, "With the river's current, you'll get it in 20 minutes. I just need a little head start, you understand?" Then, seeing him frozen in place, she smiled sincerely and said, "You actually look like my type. If our countries ever reunite, maybe we'll meet again another way." The soldier was speechless. How could she still joke in such a situation? As soon as she left, his comrades arrived and Shilli gestured for him to stay quiet, but he ignored her. Realizing she was doomed, she didn't think twice twice, escape was her only option. However, the soldiers chasing her suddenly stopped when they reached a dense minefield. Step by step, Shilli carefully avoided each mine and crossed through safely. Determined to capture her, the soldiers went around the field, but by then, Shilli had already reached the barbed wire fence. They shouted anxiously, "That's not your country! Come back!" But she couldn't understand a word they were saying. In desperation, they fired warning shots, but she climbed over the fence anyway. Anyone who crossed into North Korea would be considered insane, and the consequences were severe. After wandering for what felt like hours, Shilli finally spotted a Korean-branded plastic bag on the ground, and for the first time, she exhaled in relief. She had made it back to South Korea. But as night fell along the border, not a single house had its lights on, and her ordeal was far from over. None of the lights would turn on, yet strangely, she could still hear people talking somewhere nearby. Suddenly, the lamps flickered to life and a loudspeaker announcement echoed through the air, saying that the morning group exercises were about to begin. Such an old-fashioned custom didn't belong in modern South Korea, and it was only then that Shilli realized in shock she was still in North Korea. Just as panic began to rise, a military vehicle rolled in, its headlights blinding her, but before she could react, someone grabbed her arm and pulled her into a dark corner. It was the same soldier from before. Shilli's mind raced. In this foreign, dangerous place, the only person she could rely on was this man standing before her. So she decided to use her acting skills. Meanwhile, the man was silently debating whether to arrest her immediately or get rid of her quietly. The tense silence broke when Shilli suddenly asked if there was anything to eat. Moments later, he led her back to his home. She never imagined her life would fall this low, yet she comforted herself by thinking of it as a rare life experience, something even money couldn't buy. When the man prepared food for her, her spoiled nature began to show. Though she pretended to have good manners, saying hosts should eat first, her tone revealed her hunger. The man could already see through her pretense, and when she nervously explained that it was just Korean etiquette, he stared at her blankly, clearly unimpressed. Once the pampered daughter of a wealthy family, she now looked like a peasant woman. Trying to adapt, she fetched water into a bucket and set up a small tent, proudly calling it a simple version of a portable bathroom, unaware that even having a place to bathe here was an incredible luxury. After her quick wash, she came out refreshed, only for the power to suddenly go out again. Panic rose instantly. She had never experienced a blackout in her 20 years of life, and now she was alone in a stranger's home in North Korea. Suddenly, a flashlight beam pierced through the darkness and someone stepped into the courtyard. The blinding light made her heart race. As the doorknob began to turn, she grabbed the nearest thing, a flower vase, ready to strike. But when the door opened, it was just the homeowner returning. "Why are you back?" she asked reflexively, making the man frown. "If I don't come home, where else can I go?" he muttered. Meanwhile, news of the missing chaebol daughter spread to her family. Her disappearance caused not panic, but excitement. Finally, fortune had smiled upon them. Within 48 hours of her vanishing in a tornado, her two elder brothers were already restless, unable to wait any longer. After all, how could someone survive being swept away for 45 hours? The police urged them to wait 48 hours before confirming anything, but to the brothers, every hour felt like an eternity. Just a day earlier, their father had announced that he would hand the company over to her, and now she was gone, blown into a strange foreign land. Yet the soldier who had taken her in was also in deep trouble. Harboring an unidentified foreigner in North Korea could bring punishment to the entire border unit. To minimize risk, one of his fellow soldiers whispered that in 2 days, a boat would be leaving the country, and it might be their only chance to send her back to South Korea. Overjoyed, Shilli promised she would repay their kindness someday. The next day, while the man named Jong Hyuk was out on duty, his rival, a major, used a security inspection as an excuse to perform a surprise visit. The moment Jong Hyuk heard the news, he felt his stomach drop. Jumping into his car, he sped down the road like lightning. Seeing the car's special 729 license plate, the traffic officers immediately waved all vehicles aside, clearing the way in seconds. Jong Hyuk pressed harder on the gas. Even the next checkpoint switched the traffic lights to green just for him. Soldiers at the gate stood at attention as he flew past. The 729 plate belonged to the highest military rank. There was an old saying among them, "If you block a 729 vehicle, your life will end right there." By then, the major had already arrived at the village. "The inspection's almost complete," said one officer, but the major frowned. "If Jong Hyuk is away on duty, why are the lights on in his house?" Inside, unaware of the danger, Shilli was casually flipping through random objects, bored out of her mind. Suddenly, a voice outside shouted that a dorm inspection was starting. "What kind of era still does dorm inspections?" she muttered in disbelief. When no one answered the door, the major ordered his men to break in. They stormed inside but found no one, until one of them spotted a figure hiding in the cellar. Moments later, Shilli was dragged out like a captured criminal. "Why were you hiding in this basement?" the inspector barked. Too terrified to speak, she stood frozen. "Don't worry," the major said coldly. "We'll find out after interrogation." Just then, a car with the 729 plate screeched into the village, leaving everyone stunned. As Jong Hyuk stepped out, Shilli instinctively shook her head. If he got involved, her unclear identity might drag him down too. But the major, proud and suspicious, raised his gun and aimed it at her head. Jong Hyuk hurried forward, shouting that the woman was his fiancée. Shilli's eyes widened. Fiancé? They had barely known each other for days. When asked for his ID, Jong Hyuk solemnly claimed he was from the Intelligence Bureau, saying his credentials were classified and could not be shown. Somehow, he managed to bluff the major into leaving. Once the tension eased, Shilli began to worry again. "What if someone finds out about this fake engagement?" she asked. Jong Hyuk assured her, "Don't worry, you'll leave tomorrow night." Relieved and secretly thrilled to finally go home, she overheard a group of neighborhood women gossiping outside, whispering that Jong Hyuk didn't look like he liked her at all. He looked embarrassed, and Shilli, feeling provoked, glared at him. He just stood there helplessly. The next morning, the villagers crowded around his rare 729 car, examining it curiously. As Jong Hyuk prepared to leave, Shilli stopped him and began dusting off his jacket like a doting partner. He froze, not understanding what she was doing until she whispered, "Just play along. The ladies are watching." She then told him softly to touch her hair, pretending to be affectionate. Though speechless, he reluctantly complied, brushing her hair as she smiled shyly, making the watching women blush with secondhand embarrassment. Just as he turned to go, she whispered again, "Wave goodbye." He sighed and waved, thinking, women are truly terrifying, so clever when they want something. Still, he consoled himself that tonight she'd be gone, and this farce would end. But neither of them knew that a mysterious figure had secretly planted listening devices around their home. Every word they spoke was being recorded clearly. That single act would soon turn Shilli's hopeful journey home into a path full of obstacles and danger. Over the next few days, Shilli was deeply touched by everyone's help and decided to write down a detailed list of those who had supported her, promising that once North and South Korea were reunited, she would let them exchange the current small rewards for something far greater. When everyone received their prizes, only Jong Hyuk was left without one. The ceremony ended, leaving him speechless with annoyance. But then, to his surprise, Shilli handed him a special gift. A tiny tomato plant. She smiled proudly, saying that after she left, this tomato plant would keep his courtyard from feeling empty. Jong Hyuk nearly fainted from frustration. She had traded half a bag of potatoes to get that plant, and half a bag of potatoes could feed someone for a year. He seriously wondered if she had been kicked in the head by a donkey. Even the soldiers secretly listening to their conversations through the bugging device muttered that this woman was definitely not normal. That night, according to plan, the two of them went to the designated dock. After giving the boatman a generous bribe, they arranged for Shilli to be secretly transferred mid-sea onto another vessel heading to South Korea. It would be the perfect escape. Still, Jong Hyuk didn't feel at ease, so he boarded the boat with her. Perhaps this farewell would be their last time seeing each other. Only now, sitting quietly on the deck, did they finally exchange names for the first time. Suddenly, a bright searchlight swept across the water. The captain, startled, wondered what bad luck had brought him a surprise inspection tonight. He hurriedly hid them below deck, but Jong Hyuk's instincts screamed that something was wrong. Shilli, unaware of his worry, teased him, saying he was always too serious. But soon, their hearts pounded when flashlights flickered again. The captain feared discovery, and Shilli was terrified. If they were caught, she might never return home. Jong Hyuk, on the other hand, was frantically thinking of a way out. He suddenly asked, "Do you watch TV dramas?" Shilli blinked, realizing he had come up with some crazy idea. Jong Hyuk hesitated, saying he wasn't sure if it would work. It was a bit ridiculous, and he had never tried it before. "We're out of options. Just do it," Shilli urged. The deck hatch creaked open, and Jong Hyuk whispered, "I'm starting now." The next moment, when the inspectors peered inside, they froze in shock. The two of them were in an extremely compromising position. The inspectors, startled, stepped back, unsure of what they had just seen. When the hatch opened again, the two hurriedly continued their act, their movements so convincing that one inspector actually stared for an extra second before clearing his throat awkwardly. "Enough, both of you, up here." When they emerged, Jong Hyuk quickly flashed his police credentials. The inspector frowned, saying, "A government officer meeting someone secretly here? That's inappropriate." Before he could say more, Shilli nervously jumped in. "We're about to get married. We just came to enjoy some night fishing and got carried away." The inspector blushed, waved them off, and told them to go home immediately. Shilli, however, grew desperate. The ship bound for South Korea was right there, just ahead. She wanted to go, but Jong Hyuk stopped her. "Do you want the innocent captain to die with you?" he warned. Frustrated and heartbroken, Shilli stayed behind, then asked, "So I can still take another ship tomorrow, right?" But Jong Hyuk shook his head firmly. "Not possible. The sea's under strict control for at least another week." Shilli sighed. "You could at least comfort me instead of killing my hopes." Then she glared. "Earlier you called me your fiancé without hesitation." Jong Hyuk replied calmly, "I did that to help you." She crossed her arms. "And that sudden kiss just now? Was that helping too?" He tried to explain it was an accident, but Shilli rolled her eyes. I'm not the type to make a fuss, but at least you should apologize. Jong Hyuk exhaled. That kiss meant nothing. It was just part of the plan. Don't take it seriously. But the more he explained, the angrier she became. The next morning, a delicious smell woke her up. Jong Hyuk was grinding coffee beans, his most treasured stash, saved for years and never shared with anyone. Maybe he was feeling guilty about last night, so he made it for her. As she took a sip, she sighed happily. It's delicious. Seeing her smile, Jong Hyuk felt that the sleepless night he'd spent thinking had not been in vain. When he was about to leave, Shilli called him back. After a long reflection, she sincerely thanked him for all his help during this time. So, I prepared something for you, she said. He looked at her curiously, and she raised her hands, forming a heart with her fingers. Jong Hyuk froze, completely blank for a second, but seeing her shy expression, he somehow knew this gesture wasn't simple. Confused, he later asked his comrade who often watched K-dramas what it meant. The man told him, "That's how someone shows they like you." Jong Hyuk panicked instantly. That night, while walking with her, he decided to clarify things. To avoid misunderstandings, he began, "There's something I need to tell you." "What misunderstanding?" she asked. He took a deep breath. "I have a woman, I'm engaged." Shilli blinked. "And what does that have to do with me? I've got plenty of men back in Seoul," she scoffed, but then she paused. "Wait, if your fiancé suddenly shows up, what will you do?" Jong Hyuk reassured her that his fiancé was studying abroad in Russia and wouldn't be coming anytime soon. "You think I didn't plan for that?" he said confidently, but the universe had other plans. The very next moment, as he reached his house, his fiancé was standing right at his door. Shilli nearly burst out laughing. "So, what now?" she whispered. Indeed, the woman was refined and calm, nothing like a jealous lover, which only made Shilli feel more awkward. Jong Hyuk quickly introduced, "This is my colleague assisting in a classified operation." The fiancé's eyes narrowed slightly. "And after the operation ends, will you two keep in contact?" Jong Hyuk answered coldly, "No. Once it's over, we won't ever meet again." For some reason, those words hit Shilli like a knife. Her chest tightened painfully, but she forced a smile and said lightly, "Yes, we're just comrades. When the mission ends, we'll never see each other again, not even in another lifetime." With that, she politely said goodbye and turned to leave. But before she could step away, Jong Hyuk grabbed her arm and pulled her to the gate, scolding her softly. "Your house is that way. Don't wander off. It's already dark." Then, without another word, he pushed the door open and told her to go inside. "Lock the door and stay inside," Jong Hyuk told her softly. "I'll be back soon." But his fiancée had already caught the look in both their eyes, the way Shilli glanced at him as he left, and the way he hesitated at the gate. On the road home, he couldn't stop glancing back toward his own doorway, terrified that Shilli might try to run off on her own. His fiancée noticed every flicker of worry and knew something between them wasn't ordinary. When he finally dropped her off, her mother greeted him warmly, insisting he stay for a late meal. Around the table, the older woman's words all circled one topic. 7 years of engagement was long enough. It was time to marry. Jong Hyuk nodded politely and played the part of the perfect future son-in-law, but his eyes kept darting to the clock, clearly restless, as if something urgent waited for him elsewhere. Back at his house, Shilli kept glancing at the door without knowing why. Why was she hoping for the return of a man who already had a fiancé? To distract herself, she opened a beer, then another, and somehow the long wait stretched until dawn. When the door finally opened, she jumped. There he was. But before he could take a step inside, she spread a line of tape across the floor and declared, "This is the 38th parallel. We're just comrades. Don't cross it." Jong Hyuk blinked. "Are you angry?" She folded her arms. "You said you'd be right back. Was your right back supposed to mean an entire night?" He sighed and explained that he'd arranged for her to join an international sports delegation. If everything went right, she'd board a plane and finally go home. The words made her eyes brighten. Home had become her only dream, but neither of them knew that every word was being heard clearly by the man secretly listening in on their house. That afternoon, they set off to the provincial office to process her travel papers. "Once this is done, we won't need to remember each other," he said quietly. The line stung, but she knew it was true. While she stepped away, he quietly asked the Photoshop owner to print an extra copy of her passport photo. When she returned, still sulking from his bluntness, she suddenly saw a familiar figure. At that same moment, Jong Hyuk came out and froze. Some man was gripping Shilli's wrist, pulling her toward the elevator. His eyes hardened. In a blur, he rushed forward, catching the doors before they closed. Seeing their hands intertwined, something dark flared inside him. He yanked the man away, pinned him against the wall, his cold stare like a blade. "Who is he?" the man demanded of Shilli. "My bodyguard," she blurted out. "Bodyguard?" Jong Hyuk thought, half furious, half bewildered. Still, his instincts screamed that this stranger meant trouble. Sure enough, the man quickly arranged to meet Shilli again at 7 that evening, smiling as he said how fated it was for them to meet in a foreign land. Jong Hyuk's jaw tightened. Hearing it made his blood boil. The stranger, whose name was Cheng Jun, was being pursued by others for shady dealings. After escorting Shilli back to her hotel, Jong Hyuk tried to stay calm. "Are you sure you can trust him?" he asked. "Maybe he could help me return," she said innocently. "He managed to enter North Korea. Surely he can get me out." And And why would you believe him? Jong Hyuk asked sharply. She laughed it off. Maybe it's fate. Maybe heaven sent you here to protect me. The words hit him strangely, and he frowned, realizing he'd reacted too personally. Night came. Shilli went to meet Chung-jun. Jong Hyuk, bound by duty, went to meet his fiancée. Still, he couldn't shake the unease. You're really sure it's safe to meet him? He asked before parting. Relax, we've known each other before, she said, unaware that Chung-jun had ulterior motives. Across town, Jong Hyuk's father proposed at dinner that since the engagement had lasted 7 years, they should finally marry at the end of the month. His fiancée's mother was thrilled. Jong Hyuk agreed politely, saying a promise was a promise. Yet his emotionless tone only deepened his fiancée's quiet worry. Meanwhile, while Shilli excused herself to the restroom, Chung-jun made a call to her brother. I'm having coffee with your dead sister, he said coldly. Don't believe me? Listen. When her brother heard Shilli's voice, he froze in disbelief. He hadn't wanted her to return at all. If she stayed gone, he could inherit everything himself. Chung-jun then sent Shilli's photo to the corrupt major, who was Jong Hyuk's longtime rival. The major instantly recognized her as his enemy's fiancée. So that's who she is, he sneered. Chung-jun only asked that the major keep her in North Korea and not let her go home. Through the same surveillance network, the major learned she was planning to sneak out the next morning disguised as an athlete and ordered his men to intercept her. Unaware of any of this, Shilli shared one last meal with Jong Hyuk and his comrades. When dawn arrived, she boarded the car bound for the airport. At the gate, Jong Hyuk extended his hand. Goodbye. Her chest tightened. Tears stung her eyes. We can at least hug, can't we? She whispered, but he only shook his head, keeping his distance. She thought that handshake was their final farewell. She had no idea the real storm was yet to come. The eavesdropper, who had listened to all their conversations, was actually moved to tears by their goodbye, but still reported their route to superiors. As Shilli's car sped toward the airport, a black vehicle appeared behind them, accelerating unnaturally fast. Before anyone could react, another car came head-on, and from the grass, a motorcycle shot out, guns blazing. Their driver swerved violently, barely missing the collision, but the pursuing truck roared closer. Then the rider leapt into view. It was Jong Hyuk. He fired, disabling the truck's wheels, and another shot ignited its fuel tank in a fiery explosion. Shilli ran toward him in panic, but from the burning wreck, a man emerged and fired back. Jong Hyuk threw himself in front of her, taking the bullet meant for her chest. No, she screamed, dragging him into the car. Flooring the accelerator, she sped past 180 kilometers per hour, tears blurring her vision. At a crossroads, one sign pointed to the airport, another to the hospital. Without hesitation, she turned toward the hospital. The companion in the car shouted, "You should go to the airport!" But Shilli cried, "And what if he dies?" She refused to abandon him. When they reached the hospital, the doctors examined Jong Hyuk and declared the wound critical. Surgery was needed immediately. Jong Hyuk was bleeding heavily, and the hospital's blood bank was running dry. They urgently tried to arrange more blood from nearby facilities, but seeing him pale and fading, Shilli didn't think twice. She told the staff she was type O and offered to donate immediately. Her companion begged her to leave before it was too late, warning that if she didn't go now, she might never escape. Meanwhile, at the airport, everything for her secret departure was ready. A forged identity, a seat on the plane, and clearance to fly back to South Korea. No one there knew she was in the hospital instead, lying beside Jong Hyuk's bed, giving him her own blood. When the surgery was over and he slowly regained consciousness, his first reaction wasn't gratitude but anger. He shoved her hand away and demanded why she hadn't left. Shilli calmly explained that she couldn't. There was no time and the situation changed, but he exploded, accusing her of only making things worse for him and his men. Knowing his temper and his injuries, she quietly stepped back to avoid more conflict. That night, just as she was preparing to rest, his voice came through the dark. "Is it cold over there?" When she said nothing, he added awkwardly, "If it is, sleep here." Shilli blinked, her brain racing, then smirked and climbed into the bed without hesitation. "Yeah, it's freezing down there," she said cheekily. Jong Hyuk sighed, got out of bed like a gentleman, and told her to relax, that he wouldn't cross the line. She teased him for thinking too much, and at her teasing tone, he finally lay down beside her, tension melting into a quiet, unfamiliar closeness between them. News of Jong Hyuk's injury spread quickly. His fiance's mother rushed to the hospital to check if he'd lost any limbs. Only after confirming that his arms and legs were intact did she breathe a sigh of relief, while the fiancé stood awkwardly by his side. Jong Hyuk immediately understood the mother's concern and quickly explained that he was perfectly functional in every way. But then the fiancé's eyes fell on the heart-shaped embroidery on his hospital gown, clearly stitched by a woman. Her expression froze and she asked sharply, "Who's been taking care of you here?" After a moment's hesitation, Jong Hyuk replied truthfully, "The one you're thinking of. We've been engaged 7 years," she said coldly. Do you even realize the consequences of what you're doing?" To everyone's surprise, the man known for being honest and disciplined admitted right to her face that he liked Shilli. "Wake up," she snapped. "Our family's marriage was arranged by the state." He looked confused. What does that mean? It means you can love whoever you want, but the wedding at the end of the month is still happening. Her words left a chill in the room. Then suddenly, Jong Hyuk's heart clenched. Shilli was gone. He rushed through the halls calling her name, but she was nowhere in the hospital. Security footage showed her getting into a car with a man and the license plate traced to a villa on the outskirts. At that moment, Shilli was indeed at the villa, Jong Hyuk's own house. She'd seen people looking for him and, afraid of misunderstandings, had called him to pick her up. That evening, as he lit a candle, she said she should probably leave. After all, she hadn't even told him she'd come. But his calm, deliberate gesture made it seem like he didn't want her to go. She couldn't quite read his expression until he finally said quietly, "You can't stay near him. You know he might die because of you. Staying here is safer for both of you." At the same time, Jong Hyuk, ignoring his doctor's warnings, tried to leave the hospital to find her, only to be stopped by his fiancée. She pulled out a magazine featuring Shilli on the cover. "This woman isn't your comrade," she said coldly. "She's a South Korean chaebol heiress. You knew that, didn't you?" Jong Hyuk didn't deny it, only said he'd make sure to send her home as soon as possible. "If they find out," she warned, "you'll be finished for life." He knew that well. From the moment he'd taken Shilli in, he'd known the risk. Meanwhile, Chung-jun had persuaded Shilli with a seemingly perfect plan for her escape, but his true intentions were dark. Out of nowhere, he pulled out a wedding ring. Somewhere else, a man, Chung-jun's associate, was opening a Christmas gift from his girlfriend when a strange phone call came in. Uneasy but curious, he answered, then relaxed as soon as he heard her voice, until he realized she wasn't using her own phone. "Whose phone is that?" he asked. "I'm leaving," she whispered. "Leaving where?" he said in confusion. Her voice trembled. "You knew I was supposed to leave with Chung-jun yesterday. The plan changed. We're leaving now instantly." Jong Hyuk's instinct screamed that she was in danger. "Tell me where you are," he demanded, but she refused softly. "The car's already far away." She didn't dare say that a gun was pointed at her side. "We've said goodbye so many times," she murmured, tears in her voice. "Maybe this one can just be silent." "Tell me where you are," he shouted. "No matter how far you go, I'll come for you. Just this once. Let me say goodbye properly." But she was already breaking. "Please," she whispered. "Live well. Have a good wedding. Be happy. Forget every moment we ever had." Hearing those words, panic flooded him. He could feel something was wrong. "Describe what's around you," he begged. She glanced at the armed men across from her, who motioned for her to hang up. "I love you," she said quickly, before they snatched the phone from her hand. A gunshot cracked through the speaker. Jong Hyuk froze, breath stopping, his chest twisting with unbearable pain. He called back again and again, but the line was dead. He couldn't believe it. He wouldn't. Ignoring his unhealed wound, he stormed out of the hospital, heading straight to the villa with his men. He confronted the guards, demanding to see her, but Chung-jun stopped him at the gate, warning that taking her would ruin them both. Shilli, hearing the shouting, came out to meet him. His first question was desperate. "Are you hurt?" She glared through her tears. "What about you? Shouldn't you still be resting? What are you doing running around in this freezing weather? Have you lost your mind?" He said simply, "I came to take you home, to get you out of here." "I don't need you to," she snapped. "I already have a way back. I'm marrying Chung-jun and getting a British passport. Then I can leave safely. I even accepted the ring. We'll never see each other again." "You can go." Jong Hyuk's shoulders tensed as he turned away slowly. Watching him walk off, Shilli's heart twisted painfully. He felt the same ache, heavier than anything before. Inside, Chung-jun poured himself another drink, then froze when he heard an engine roar to life outside. His car. Shilli had taken it. Racing through the night, she searched for Jong Hyuk, tears streaming as she finally spotted him on the road. She jumped out, ran straight to him, and before a single word could leave her mouth, he pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as if letting go would mean losing her forever. While Jong Hyuk was still asleep, Shilli quietly prepared for Christmas, decorating the place and heading out early to buy him a gift. But as she stepped outside, two unexpected strangers blocked her path, armed men. In North Korea, civilians couldn't own guns, which meant these people were either part of the black market or high-ranking officials. Jong Hyuk's first thought went to his fiancée. When he later confronted her, his voice was tight with fear. "You didn't hurt her, did you?" She smiled coldly. "Yes, she's dead. You'll never see her again." His blood turned to ice. Then a strange spark of suspicion flickered through his mind, and that suspicion soon led him to a discovery he never expected. At that same time, Shilli, now back in South Korea, was lying in a wide, soft bed, sipping an expensive glass of Lafite 1982 in a marble bathtub, murmuring to herself how surreal life was, how everything felt like a movie. She had survived. She had her luxury back, yet the joy felt hollow. The material comfort she once craved surrounded her, but her heart was still somewhere far away. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jong Hyuk's face, his voice echoing in her mind. What she didn't know was that he was alive and making his way through a collapsing tunnel under the border, entering South Korea illegally just to find her. But danger was waiting. Someone was already watching his every move. Soon after, Shilli began seeing hallucinations. She saw Jong Hyuk standing there on the street, smiling softly at her. She thought she was dreaming until he walked right up to her. "I've been looking for you for so long," he said breathlessly. "Luckily, you once told me you lived near here, and I can't believe I I actually found you." She touched his arm and realized this was no illusion. He was real. He had come for her. But Jong Hyuk hadn't crossed the border just for a reunion. He had a mission. He told her in a low voice that he had sneaked in to hunt down his greatest enemy, Zhao Zheqiang, a corrupt official who had escaped justice after being exposed for smuggling and embezzlement. "He's here," Jong Hyuk said, eyes sharp, "and his target is you. He wants to use you to destroy me and my father's name. I won't let that happen." Shilli's chest tightened with understanding and fear. "When will you go back?" she asked softly. "As soon as I catch him," he replied. Hearing that, she decided to help and brought him to her apartment. But before they could even sit down, the doorbell rang. On the monitor, she saw her brother. Confused and uneasy, she told Jong Hyuk to hide. When she opened the door, her brother stormed in with his wife, their tone sharp. "Why did you block our numbers?" he demanded. She forced a smile, trying to diffuse the tension, but her brother's face hardened. "I know everything about North Korea, about you crossing the border." Her stomach dropped. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. "Simple," he said coldly. "Stay out of the inheritance. If you don't fight me for Dad's assets, this whole thing stays buried. But if you do, your little adventure in North Korea becomes public, and we both know what that would mean." From the next room, Jong Hyuk heard everything, shocked that someone could threaten their own sister that way. He finally understood what Shilli once told him back in North Korea, that her family might not actually want her home safe. As the brother and his wife left, the woman paused, noticing a pair of men's shoes near the door. That small detail would come back to haunt them later. The next day, Shilli headed to the parking garage, planning to drive out. She remembered how Jong Hyuk had once told her, "Always check under the hood before driving. Sometimes it can save your life." She'd laughed at him then, thinking, this is South Korea, not a war zone. But as she approached her car, she froze. There was someone sitting inside. Pretending not to notice, she slowly reached for her phone, trying to dial for help. Before she could press call, the man stepped out of the car, gun glinting under the lights. Shilli turned and ran, her footsteps echoing as he chased her through the dimly lit parking structure. Her phone fell and shattered on the ground, but there was no time to stop. The garage had 2 levels. She darted down the ramp and ducked into the shadows. The man searched corner by corner, growing impatient. Meanwhile, Shilli slipped into the control room, hoping to use the security cameras to track his position. Just then, her phone buzzed. Jong Hyuk was calling. But before she could grab it, the man picked it up instead. He smirked and answered, "Your beloved is right here with me." Jong Hyuk's heart stopped. He jumped into his car and sped toward the garage while the gunman waited in ambush. Shilli, realizing what was happening, yanked the emergency lever and killed the lights, plunging the basement into total darkness. "Don't come here!" she shouted into the darkness. "He has a gun!" Moments later, a hand grabbed her arm, and for an instant she panicked until she recognized the voice. It was Jong Hyuk. He'd found her by sound, using his soldier's instincts to locate her in the dark. Together, they escaped through the side exit, barely dodging a bullet. But the danger was far from over. The gunman had already learned where she lived, and now, thanks to her own greedy brother, who had secretly allied with outsiders to eliminate her, the threat was closing in. Soon after, Shilli received shocking news. The group of 5 comrades from North Korea, the same ones who once served under Jong Hyuk, had come to South Korea. She met them with mixed feelings, scolding gently, "You shouldn't have come here." They just grinned, saying they missed her and their commander too much. Among them was the repentant eavesdropper who had once betrayed them but now returned to set things right, helping Jong Hyuk capture Zhao Zheqiang and bring him to justice. They all ended up at Shilli's house, and the first thing the eavesdropper did, out of old habit, was sweep the place for bugs. Shilli laughed helplessly, telling him, "This isn't North Korea. Nobody's listening." Yet that night, as she got up for water, she overheard them talking quietly in the next room. The eavesdropper told Jong Hyuk that her father had arranged everything. Once the international sports event ended in 5 days, they would leave together and drive back across the border. But the look in Jong Hyuk's eyes said it all. He didn't want to go, not yet. There were too many things, and one person he couldn't bear to leave behind. What none of them realized was that while they planned their return, someone else was already watching. Every step, every whisper, every heartbeat, and the real storm was only just beginning. Outside Shilli's house, hidden in the shadows, someone was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The eavesdropper, whose instincts had been sharpened by years of covert work, suddenly felt something was off. An invisible tension in the air, like danger quietly circling them. That night, as Shilli drove down a lonely street, she noticed several cars tailing her. Her heart pounded. She pressed harder on the accelerator, but the cars behind her did the same, closing in fast. Within moments, they boxed her in and forced her to a stop. A gang of men armed with iron rods climbed out, their expressions cold and ready. These weren't random thugs. They were hired muscle, and they were here for her. Meanwhile, Jong Hyuk, tracking the situation, was lured into enemy territory by a planted lead. The moment he arrived, a swarm of attackers surrounded him. Luckily, Shilli had anticipated this possibility. Using her influence, she'd called in a group of local gang tenants she once helped, promising them 2 full years of rent-free living if they came to Jong Hyuk's aid. When they arrived, chaos exploded in the night. Fists flew, shouts echoed, metal clashed against metal, and in the frenzy, the attackers retreated into the dark corners, plotting their next move. Shilli, watching everything unfold from her car, grew tense. The gunman hiding in the shadows was aiming straight at Jong Hyuk, who was stepping out of the building completely unaware. The trigger was pulled. Without hesitation, Shilli swerved her car, throwing it between Jong Hyuk and the gunman. The windshield shattered under the bullet's impact. When the noise stopped, she lay slumped against the steering wheel, motionless. Jong Hyuk's blood ran cold. He fired several shots toward the gunman before rushing to the car. When he opened the door and saw her fall into his arms, lifeless, despair crushed him like a wave. He would have traded his life 1,000 times to take her place. The ambulance arrived quickly, and as paramedics worked to save her, he stood frozen outside the emergency room, helpless. Watching her disappear through the swinging doors, he felt as if his entire world had gone silent. Minutes stretched like hours until finally, the light above the operating room flicked off and they wheeled her out, alive. But because of his classified identity, he couldn't go inside. He could only stand quietly at the door, looking through the small window, seeing her surrounded by family, relieved and smiling. Inside, Shilli's eyelids fluttered open. The moment she saw her sister-in-law, the woman screamed with joy, calling for the doctors. But as Shilli gathered her breath, her eyes hardened. With a faint voice, she said only 3 words. "Get out, everyone." The relatives froze, shocked, as she repeated it more forcefully. "All of you, get out!" At the same time, Jong Hyuk received a phone call from Shilli herself. "Why isn't my bodyguard at his post?" she asked coldly. "Who allowed him to leave without permission?" Hearing her voice, he ran faster than he ever had in his life, crashing through hospital corridors until he found her room. When their eyes met, they could barely speak, tears blurring everything. "Why did you drive into danger like that?" he shouted, trembling. "If you had died, what would I have done?" Shilli reached out a weak hand, wanting only to hold him. That single embrace was enough. It told him she'd risked everything, even her life, for him. Their comrades from the north heard the news that Shilli had woken up and rushed to the hospital, eager to see her. But Jong Hyuk stopped them at the door. "She's too weak for hugs," he said. "A handshake will do." Curious, he asked how they even knew she'd regained consciousness. The eavesdropper sheepishly pulled out a small listening device from beneath her bed. "We planted it while she was unconscious," he admitted. "We just wanted to make sure she was okay, but we ended up hearing something else." He played the recording, a secret conversation between her brother and sister-in-law planning to destroy her, even discussing their next step while she was in a coma. Shilli's face went pale. The betrayal she had long suspected was now undeniable. But across the street, a camera lens was already flashing. A tabloid photographer had been filming their reunion the whole time. "Jackpot," he whispered. "This angle will go viral." The next morning, Shilli's new boyfriend was trending all over the internet. When she saw the photos, Shilli actually chuckled. "They took pretty good pictures, didn't they?" she said lightly. She didn't know that her father had already been contacted by national intelligence officers. They showed him 2 photographs. "These men," they explained, "are North Korean defectors. Their purpose is clear. They came here for your daughter. We need to question her." Soon, agents entered Shilli's hospital room. They said they were there to investigate the shooting incident. Though her pulse spiked with guilt, she stayed composed. "If I tell you the truth," she asked, "will you really arrest the person responsible?" The agents nodded, but before revealing anything, Shilli called for all her relatives to come. Once everyone gathered, she pressed play on a recorder. The room fell silent as the voices of her brother and sister-in-law filled the air, planning her elimination, talking about how to take the next step while she was unconscious. Her father's face drained of color. He had never imagined his own son could do such a thing. The brother tried to deflect blame, saying it was all his wife's idea, but their mother, furious and trembling, slapped him hard across the face. The slap echoed through the room, but even that couldn't fix what had already been broken. Meanwhile, the true enemy, the wounded gunman, was hiding in an abandoned warehouse, patching himself up. He thought he was safe, but Jong Hyuk had already tracked him down. He was ready. He would not let such filth live. But the moment he raised his gun, red laser dots flickered across his body. The gunman smirked from across the room. "Shoot, and we both die," he said. Jong Hyuk knew it was a trap, that no matter what he did, death was close. The man raised his own weapon, ready to fire one last time, but Jong Hyuk dove aside just as the sensors triggered. Dozens of automatic rounds exploded across the warehouse, shredding the man's body where he stood. When the echoes stopped, only silence remained. Jong Hyuk knew what this meant. A North Korean soldier caught alive in South Korea was as good as a dead man. Even if he surrendered, he'd be treated as a spy, and anyone connected to him, including Shilli, would suffer. He closed his eyes, gripping the gun, ready to end it himself. But before he could pull the trigger, armed commandos stormed in. Red laser sights flooded the room. He sighed. Now he wouldn't even get the mercy of choosing his death. Outside, rain poured relentlessly. Shilli stood by the window, waiting, wondering why he hadn't answered her calls. Just then, government agents burst into her room, flashing IDs from the National Intelligence Service. "We have orders," they said. Before she could react, her North Korean comrades, the 5 men who had protected her, were taken away in handcuffs. Ignoring her pain and IV lines, Shilli ripped the tubes out and ran after them, begging the agents to let her explain, to take her too. But the men only smiled faintly. "We'll be fine," they said. "Go back inside and rest." Watching them dragged away, Shilli broke down, blaming herself for everything. The monitors beside her bed beeped wildly, showing her heart racing out of control. Everyone who had ever risked their life for her was now imprisoned because of her, and the storm that began with love was about to engulf them all. After being arrested, the 5 North Korean comrades were mentally prepared for anything. They imagined torture, poison, or even being forced at gunpoint. Soon, they were brought to the National Intelligence Service, given identical uniforms, and subjected to medical exams before formal interrogation began. Every one of them kept their mouths shut, but Jong Hyuk was even harder to break, silent like a statue. What he didn't know was that investigators had already uncovered his identity. He was the son of a North Korean military officer. His father, informed that the entire team had been captured, was relieved only that his son was still alive. To determine whether Jong Hyuk had committed any crimes in South Korea, agents reviewed GPS and surveillance footage of his every move. All they found was him helping people, holding doors, rescuing strangers, assisting elderly women. "What is this?" the director snapped. "Are we awarding him Citizen of the Year?" But the analysts shrugged. That was genuinely all they had. Finally, the director personally confronted Jong Hyuk, demanding to know why he had illegally entered the Republic of Korea. Calmly, Jong Hyuk replied that his mission was to bring the wealthy heiress Yoon Se-ri back to the north. When Se-ri heard about his confession, she instantly realized he was taking all the blame to protect her. She went to the agents and told them everything. She had hidden the men, and Jong Hyuk had come only to capture the fugitive Jao Jaekyang. She begged them to send the team safely home, taking full responsibility herself. But Jong Hyuk stuck to his false story, insisting he had manipulated her for political gain. "Stop," she pleaded through tears. "If you keep this up, you'll destroy your life." He turned away coldly. "I don't want to see you again." Moments later, Se-ri collapsed. When agents asked Jong Hyuk why he'd spoken so harshly, he didn't answer. Then he bolted out of the room. Se-ri had barely survived her breakdown. Now, delirious, she ran through the rain straight toward him, toward the heavily guarded border. Soldiers on both sides raised their rifles, tense as wire. Jong Hyuk ripped off his restraints and crossed the line to catch her. The troops shouted warnings, but the two ignored them. Yesterday, he had lied to protect her. Today, he would rather die than let her go. She fainted in his arms at the DMZ, her heart stopping briefly. In the hospital, he watched the defibrillator jolt her body again and again with no response, until finally the monitor beeped. A pulse. She lived. His silent tears told her mother everything. When Se-ri woke, her mother told her the truth. Jong Hyuk was being deported. The convoy was already en route to the border for an exchange deal secretly agreed upon by both nations. Se-ri couldn't hold back. She raced to see him one last time. At the checkpoint, the two reached for each other across the line. The soldiers on both sides tensed, guns drawn, but all they wanted was a final embrace, a goodbye. Within seconds, officers pulled them apart. One step more, and they would belong to different worlds forever. Back in the north, Jong Hyuk's convoy stopped midway. Soldiers surrounded the vehicles. An ambush. The fat officer supposedly escorting them revealed his betrayal, but Jong Hyuk's father arrived in full uniform, leading loyal troops. Without hesitation, he shot the traitor dead, his first time firing in front of his son. The danger passed, and because of his rank, the incident was quickly buried. Days later, Se-ri received something impossible, a text message from Jong Hyuk. Between the two Koreas, communication was blocked, yet each day a message came, simple and warm. They revived her spirit. Meanwhile, Jong Hyuk returned to his post. His fiancée visited him, not to demand marriage, but to hand him their old camera from Switzerland. Inside were photos proving fate had linked them long before. They'd unknowingly captured each other in the same frame years earlier. On her birthday, Se-ri received one last scheduled message. "If destiny allows, let's meet again where the heavens first crossed our paths." Soon after, Jong Hyuk told his men, "Handle things yourselves. I'm going on vacation to Switzerland." There, he once again tried paragliding, the very sport that had first carried Se-ri into his world. As he landed, the chute tangled and covered his head. He cursed softly, fumbling free, until a familiar voice teased, "Your landings are still terrible, but at least you fall in the right place." He looked up, and there she was. Se-ri stood smiling through tears. She ran into his arms, and this time they didn't hold back. The two embraced under the alpine sky, the years of pain and waiting melting away into a single perfect moment, their long-promised reunion at last.